Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hello, welcome to my show. I'm Royce, and I'm so glad that you're here. I help people on their journey to transformation, transforming their lives from the roots, as that little intro just said. But I find that those of us that are trying to transform sometimes don't realize there's a really strong part of us that does not want to change. It's terrified of change. And that is our fear-based consciousness. That's the part of us that's kind of a primitive, survival-based element that we kind of live from, whether we know it or not. And that part of us says, well, yeah, change is kind of scary. It's much more comfortable sitting here in this place, even if it's uncomfortable. So I find that to have a change welcoming life, you need to get to the origins, the roots of that fear of change. Otherwise, it's kind of futile. You might find yourself changing and then that part of you gets triggered and it stops it and it sabotages you, etc. So even if you're claiming that you want change, I have a lot of students that said, oh, I really want to change. And then when it gets down to it, that part of them gets triggered and then they sabotage themselves. So learning to embrace change, even through the fears, is what we need to do. And I find that the results are definitely worth it. So even if you've tried all kinds of methods, and a lot of my students arrive saying, I tried this and I tried that and nothing worked, or I worked for a little while and I've had the same experience. So that's why we've got to get to the origins, the roots of those desires to change. And I do find, and maybe my guests will confirm this as we talk, but I find that there's no magic pill. There's no magic waving the magic wand to get change to happen and to stick. It just doesn't happen. There's a lot of stuff we've got to go through, especially in the work that I do. We've got to dig deep to get to those roots, and then change will happen. And I also find, interestingly enough, that you don't even realize it when you change. I know in my own life, I went through all kinds of dramatic shifting, and I would see things differently, and I would see myself differently, and I would be more assertive and more trusting and more deserving. But I didn't even see it. I didn't even notice it. I remember going out to dinner with one of my closest friends, and she hadn't seen me for a few years, and she went, wow, you have really changed. So it's kind of nice to have that confirmation. So I am going to be talking today with somebody that is all about change, and she talks about change on a physical level, which I think is really, really interesting, and we'll get into that in a minute. And what I'm welcoming Dr. Pat Boulogne, and she is a doctor of chiropractic, acupuncture physician. She has multiple certifications in all kinds of functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, Chinese sports medicine. But what I love about Dr. Pat is that she is passionate about what she does, and she wants to get to the roots, the physical roots of what it is, the who, what, where, when, and why of why we have physical issues going on. And her goal is to really skyrocket people's health so that they can live life from a healthy, joy-filled, energized place and she'll talk more about that. She talks a lot about mindset, which is, of course, what I do too, and how important that is to solve some of these physical problems. And she gives solutions. She helps make sense of why certain things are going on physically. So, welcome. What an honor to have you, Dr. Pat.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. There's so many keywords that you use that I use all the time. So I'm really thrilled. We're going to have a great show
Oh, yes.
for sure.
Awesome. You're a little bit out of sync with your lips and your words, so I'll just kind of adjust to that.
Okay.
Technology. Yeah.
hmm
So I read in your bio that you retired, and yet you had something happen in your life that said, I really need to fix this. I need to help people. So tell us about what happened.
Well, I retired and I moved to Boston. I lived on Cape Cod Essential. If you like Sand Dunes, Patty Page's song. And it's just, it was quintessential. The air that you breathe, there wasn't a lot of crowds. And I dove into living down Boston. And that was a real big eye opener for me because I would walk around very early in the morning and I would see people. And I actually would talk to them and ask them questions like, "Are you okay?" Because there was nobody home. And then they would just look at me and go, "Or you seem upset, or you seem so distant. I mean, are you aware that you're walking almost in front of a car?" and, and I had these experiences on a regular basis. I would walk about 4 miles every day. I'd walk through town and in a real nice shopping area where a lot of boutiques and that type of things were. And then I'd walk back through the park, and that would and that would take up a portion of my morning. But I always paid attention to people in this one area near the financial district called Post Office Square. And I would go have coffee on my way back, and I would watch people do what they did, every day, how they dressed, how they carried their posture. And it used to, it was mind boggling to me that a lot of these people, to the shoes that they were in, let alone the earth that they were on, you could tell by the look in their face like nobody was home. So
Wow.
and I had that repetitiousness, and I would go through I go every morning to the gym at 6 o'clock when it opened up, and I had a whole group of people that I'd connect with there. And everyone was on the racetrack of like how to get someplace faster. And right about the same time when I lived downtown Boston, I lived there for 10 years. So right around that same time when living in Boston, I thought, I read an article from the CDC, which claimed 2,500 people who lived not in the same place, but in the same study, all tested for potentially dangerous chemicals and toxins that are in the environment in their blood and urine. How could that be? I mean, I was just thinking, they don't know each other. So what it tells me is that there's a lot of things in our environment. This is way back in 2010 when it was published, that there's a lot that are affecting how we think, how we move, how we feel, and it interferes with our productivity, with our balance. Because when people start to get sick, they don't even know that they're getting sick. I mean, they just think that, oh, I'm aging. That's it.
It's the
That's
way it
part of
is.
life. Yeah, just like, let's just go on the road, it's just like, my parents had a problem, with, being overweight or something, where they realize is that all those plastic bottles of water that they're drinking, that they let sit in the sun in their car, and they're still drinking them, they're filling their bodies with plastics. There's a lot of chemicals out there that, from the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the food that you eat, the chemicals that you use in your garden, and also in your house that are making you sick. And you don't really a lot of people don't pay attention. You presume, I mean, Americans oversized. You go get a glass of wine in Rome, it's an actual real glass of wine, maybe like 3-4 ounces, something like that. In the States, you actually get half a bottle in some places, and they pour them in these humongous glasses. So we're oversized. Where we have, so much exposure to other things like, from like a lot of sugars. We're led to believe a lot of things are safe for us. And when in essence, if you did the research on it, you would find out that they're not. And that really upset me. And so when I had that experience, I started looking around for like, what other things am I going to do since I was now retired and yada, yada. And I ended up, kept on coming back to, because I still had private clients and I would, give them questionnaires to do. And like, why didn't you answer this one part of the question? Over here, like, why is that? I go, well, it seemed like they asked that already over. I figured you could look at that. I said, no, it's called answer the question. and and from a lot of like different pieces of the puzzle that I had from that, what I discovered is that a lot of people didn't understand some of the language of some of these science-based questionnaires in order so you could get the right information, so you give them information back, because you cannot make good decisions if you're given bad information. And a lot of times, a lot of people, when they go to doctors, that's exactly what happens. And then they don't have they don't have their checklist to say, well, that makes sense, but you know what, that doesn't make sense at all. And we don't, and in this day and time, I witness people right side and left side not equaling, and they're where they caught that mindset glitch at. You always have to go back to the root and where that came from, whether it was childhood, whether it was something, that overexposure to manipulation, from watching TV and that type of stuff.
Wow.
Pretty interesting.
There's a lot to unpack from what you just said. That's
I'm
amazing.
sorry. I'm a data dumper.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So when you were saying the statistics, is that worldwide or is that just United States, or where does that?
That was a CDC study in the United States.
Just the United States. Wow.
But it's pretty representative. A lot of people, when I walk into people's houses, I will leave someone's house who has a plug-in. They give me a headache immediately. They're full of toxins and they're carcinogenic. And they've been known, and you don't have to believe me, you can look it up on Google. But there's a lot of them that have some other chemicals in it that, affect your respiratory system and affect your health ultimately for long time exposure to them.
Yeah. You're talking about plug-in, like the room fragrance.
Like something from Glade, not necessarily them specifically, but any of them.
Even the ones that say that they're aromatherapy based?
Well, there's, you have to think about this too. I mean, you go to a restaurant and people put all sorts of herbs and spices together. They never think about whether or not they combine properly. So it's the same thing that you might have. You might have no sensitivity to lavender or to cinnamon, but, I might have, if when I have my aromatherapy stuff going on, I don't put a lot of lavender in, and I really watch how much. Or even I can give you a funny example of, there's some essential oils that are edible. And so I made this salad that my sister gave me, this great recipe when I was at her house. I loved the salad. It had shrimp and cucumbers and kalimata olives, all these wonderful things in it. And it had oregano. Well, I didn't have any oregano, but I had oregano essential oil. So I looked at the bottle and I thought, well, I know there's, it's very compressed, right? That it's 50 pounds per 15 milliliter bottle of peppermint. So I'm going, I need to be careful. Well, when I went to go put a couple drops in, about 5 or 6 came out. And I had to go back to the store and buy more cucumbers, more shrimp. And I had the biggest salad because I was not throwing it away. And it was because it's like, so some of it is like so intense. I've even tried oregano in a diffuser one time, and I only had 3 drops in it, and I had to open every window in the house and wash out the diffuser because it was so intense. So some people might go, oh, that's wonderful. Other people could have reactivity to that because they don't have the immune system or their body makeup, that chemistry doesn't fit for that.
Yeah, yeah. I used to have a retail store that was all earth-friendly products and art.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so much about fragrance from that shop. And because I didn't know that aromatherapy, this is like 20 years ago, I didn't know that aromatherapy was much better than the the chemically based fragrance that most everything is filled with. And I reached the point where I couldn't, like you said, I couldn't even walk into somebody's house if they had artificial fragrance going on. It just made me sick. and that's so important. I think we get immune to that sort of thing. We really
Yeah.
do.
Well, we have like
Yeah.
little exposures, and those little exposures end up being,
Mhm.
then they
Yeah.
accumulate. It's like you don't get sick overnight. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
getting sick is a process.
Yes.
I had a woman in. I know that we're going to talk about my book, but I had a woman when we that she said to me, and she was in my business group, and we all support each other in business groups. So when someone launched a book, everyone, you bought the book no matter what, and you also read it and you left a review. And she just said, she goes, well, I have a question for you, and she goes, I'm not sick, I'm not fat, I'm not tired. The name of the book is Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And she
Right.
said, so why would anybody who's like me not want to buy your book? um, and so what I said to her was like, if you're tired. I mean, you really know. I mean, you can't keep your eyes open sometimes, right? And if you're fat, basically, you can take a look in the mirror. You can see how your clothes fit you. Look at a profile picture, for instance. That'll do it for you in a nanosecond, but know if you're truly fat, on the inside and outside, which is the VAT fat, you have to do body composition. But you don't know if you're sick. You
Mm.
don't get sick from one exposure to something,
Right. Right.
and you get sick from having repeated exposures, and then your immune system weakening, and it will always weaken in your weakest link. And so there's always, in Chinese medicine, we always learn the place that when people start to get like cold or they're going to get the flu, where they feel it at is across the back of their shoulders and also on the calves. And the reason for that is because it's the most superficial meridian in the body.
Hmm.
And so it's where, and the Chinese always talk about wind being evil, whether it's cold or whether it's hot or whether it's moist or whether it's dry. And when it hits your meridian, it can affect the functionality of how that meridian
Mm.
functions. So that's why you feel sometimes that real tightness around the shoulders and like in the back of the calves, but that's giving you a warning sign, from, your about your health, going like, I better pay attention to this because obviously I got exposed to something. So how do I improve that? And
Yeah.
and so when you can do that, there's a lot of Chinese remedies that help support that.
So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
You said how you got back into helping people, but how did you start originally? I think you said 38 years ago you were doing this. What drew you to wanting to help people in this way?
I always I go to the story that, when I was a kid, I played the doctor. I never played the nurse. I never was the patient, and I never died, and I never killed anybody. And I carried that through my whole practice. And I always had that, I used to take, I used to catch bees in my backyard and put punch holes in the jar top. And then I would tell my father that he asked me what I was doing with them. And I said, I'm training them. And he said, whatever you do, when you open up the top of the jar, open it up away from you. And and it is, it's all those things that, you did to, like, help animals. I would find someone's dog lost. I would pick the dog up or take the dog home with me. And then we had to go through the painstaking, because I go like, I already fell in love with a dog and I always wanted to help them. So, it started a long time ago. And, science for me was pretty easy. I didn't realize it. Looking back at it, I turned in a Vlasic pickle jar experiment on pH. And pH is either you have basic or acid or it's neutral. And I only had Vlasic pickle jars, and my father brought me home a chemical from where he worked at, so I could do the project. And my teacher liked it so much, and he thought it was advanced for someone who was 9 years old. So he entered it into the state competition. And I came in second place, and I just never thought that was important. I just like, oh, that's just what's normal. Yeah. And I've always liked to see people like excel. Like, I always look for how to solve the problem, how to make it easier, what's the better solution. And like, why are we going this way? If you turn down this street, you can miss all this traffic and make a left-hand turn.
Yeah.
Those kind of things I've always liked to help people, and animals.
Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting because I'm listening to your childhood, and I was the exact same way, but I went in a totally different direction because science was so hard for me. I couldn't get it. Math and science, forget it. I was an art major.
Well, well, it's just like there's an art and science to both what we do.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Right?
true.
It's if I ever drew anything, you would never recognize it. So,
Right. Yeah.
including my handwriting. So,
Well, that's pretty typical of a doctor, right?
well, the thing is that you're writing before they had like, dictating notes or electronic notes. You only took paper notes. And
Yeah.
so, you created, abbreviations so that you would know what they are.
Right.
Like if you ever see on a medical record, PTS, potential trouble source, or PTP, potential trouble patient, means they don't like you. It's because, it's like if you ask somebody too many questions, and in your scenario, a lot of times that you'll see, you know, and they're always talking about, following up in, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is that they think is appropriate for whatever, procedure that they did in order uh, to have the pieces of the puzzle come together for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a
So,
question person.
yeah, me too. Everything. Yes. The meaning of life, those kind of questions. So, who do you aim your work at? Is there a particular person that you want to help the most, or is it just kind of broad based, everybody? What is your focus?
Well, if I can share a little bit of my story with you,
Yeah.
when I went to chiropractic school, um, it was a turning point for me about, being, first off, I had to fight with my father about this because he didn't want me to be a chiropractor. And but my father was an entrepreneur and executive and a business owner, and he died of a heart attack.
Mm.
And there were so many things I always thought about. Well, if he would have done, what I told him to do about this, or if he would have done this, or he would have done that, maybe he would have been able to be here longer, because that would have made a huge difference.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and so he died very suddenly and very at a young age,
Mm.
and so I've always focused on like other entrepreneurs and executives and business owners, and that's where I would like to focus because the that group of people, so many times thinks out of the box or not. But generally speaking, I like this, like, because I'm going, God, if you can change their life and they have the capacity to do even more, it's just like then you can take what you get from them and you can share it with people who might not be as fortunate, um, and also be able to like push the world a little bit further in a better way.
Mm. Yeah. Wow, that's great. So, I was mentioning that you do address mindset in what you do. Tell us a little bit about how you do that. What does that entail?
Well, that even comes from childhood too. Um, I used to, for me, mindset is a master key. And because I talk about health and what it is, and we all know that in the dictionary, they at least say it's your organs functioning 100% of the time. And the NIH says that no, it's not, or WHO says no, it's not that. It is also includes not being, having infirmities or being absent of that, and also having in the environment and how you process your interaction with the environment. So, um, and looking at that, I'm going, well, what do people do with that? I mean, that's like, how do I make sense of that? So I made 5 pillars up, and the first pillar is proper diet and nutrition. For me, they go together as one, and you have to have great diet with the great nutrition that it interjects in that. And then proper exercise. You have to move. If you don't move, you're going to die. I mean, that's just is going to, that it ultimately, I learned that from a 92-year-old woman, and that was the first thing she said to me when I was in student clinic. The third thing is you have to have great sleep. Great sleep. Sleep is where you revitalize. You hit the ground running the next day. You detox your body, and it repairs all the pieces of the puzzle that you did during the daytime. And then there's positive mental attitude and positive mindset. And then the last pillar is proper posture, which is structure, function. And because you don't have good structure, you can't have good function. So having that good posture is essential for all the pieces to work. But the master controller of that, you know, is you have to have your mindset, because if you don't, mindset's not straight, you don't have the mental attitude. Attitude is altitude. Then you're not as likely to be successful at the exercise portion or the diet portion or the sleep portion. And asking yourself, what is it that I have to do to be my God's almighty best, and where am I lacking? And if I'm lacking someplace, there's another place that I have strength that I can pull off of. So, in the mindset portion, saying, and talking to the mammalian brain, because the mammalian brain controls all the emotions and all the actions that ever happened to you in your life. So, if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again and you're having a negative experience, don't do it anymore. Do something different that's positive, that can change the messaging on that, so that your lizard brain, or your reptilian brain, is telling you, like, oh, don't do that. The time that the reptilian brain really works well is when you want to, make a family, and when you want to stop short to not kill yourself or anybody else in a car, or the saber-toothed tiger is in front of you. So in your conscious brain, and having that mindset, that piece of that puzzle for that is, saying, those affirmations that you say in the morning and you say at the end of the day, and saying them in first person. I am healthy, I am vital, I'm active, successful human being. On this day, I give myself unselfishly to help those who need me the most. So if you're saying your mindset, if you're getting up, not hitting the ground running with a positive thought, you can just change it in a second. Mindset's something that you can change in a nanosecond. You're going like, oh, this is not my best experience. What is it that I'm learning from this experience right now? That I can take with me that I never have to do again. Or that if it's so great, you just like, I want to repeat this again. Success has patterns. And so, and talking, about mindset, you've got to like take a look at where it comes from. I had a woman that was a client of mine that had this red mark on her leg, and I physically met her. That's how I originally met her, and then I moved from that area, and we continued to work together. And I said, "Where'd you get it from?" She goes, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, has it always been that size?" "No." "How big was it in the original?" She goes, "Oh, I think it was like the size of a 50-cent piece, something like that." And now it was like 7 inches long, and it didn't have jagged borders. It was just this red blotch on her leg. And I said, in Chinese medicine, red blotches and hives and things like that are deep, and they go back to the blood. And I said, so, if I could show you a way that maybe if that's connected to an emotional component for you, would you do that? And so and we ended up doing that when working together. And we started looking at our diet, because I believe, and I have seen and witnessed thousands and thousands and thousands of times, that mindset matters. And also, doing the right things for your health matter. And so we started working together. And then one day she was very edgy. And I asked her, "What's going on?" And she said, "My brother's visiting from Japan." And I went, "Great." I said, "It must be a lot of fun for everyone to get together. When's the last time you saw him?" And she's going, "There's a lot of tension though. I can't put my finger on it." And I said, "So what's going on?" And so but as soon as that dynamic changed, everybody's mindset in her whole family changed. And I said, "So you don't have to buy into that mindset." I said, "Let's find out where that comes from." And so we talked about things that happened, like, how does that make you feel? And was there a time before that something similar didn't happen like that, but the feeling happened? I don't care about what happened. And so then she talks about this feeling, and we brought it down to a time when she was 4 years old, and that her father favored her brother over her, over something that he really should have favored her over him. And it locked it in her brain that she was insufficient. That was a word. I was insufficient at the age of 4. You got to be kidding me. And so we just worked through that to say, like, okay, has there been a previous time that you felt like that? And then she felt isolated, and we worked on those components. So when we finished, it was no longer those situations. She was no longer reactive to her environment, in which settled into where her situation in her leg was at, is she was now proactive, going like, that happened, I moved on. It doesn't affect me anymore. So, and it was her new mindset. We created a new mindset for her. In a month and a half, that piece, that red piece that was on her leg, we measured it down to about an inch, an inch to about like an inch and a half, something like that. And like a kind of if you measure like a kind of a circle, and we didn't do anything to treat or try to figure that part of it out, is the emotional component in her. So every time that she had a hurt, a pain, or a circumstance that happened to her that felt like that original experience, when she got divorced, when she had, one of her kids, when she was having problems with her kids because she couldn't figure it out, all those things just piled on top of that one point that hits her body in a specific place, and that's how it manifests out.
Yeah.
So when she was no longer reactive to that, and it was like now a memory, that particular thing, a lot of things in her life started to shift. She's an artist, and she always quelled being an artist, so one of the things she gave me as a present was this painting that she did, and I still don't understand it, but the painting was really, it had colors that I really liked, on it, and the such. But her thing was like, oh my God. And then she wanted to go away with her friend, which she did, and she said, do you think I could have a couple of glasses of alcohol while I'm gone? And I said, well, considering that we took alcohol out of your view box in your box of what you can do right now. And I said, you can do whatever you want. I'm not your mother. And I said, but, but if it was me and I just got done spending the kind of money they just got done spending to work with me, whatever that was for her at the time. This is early on when I was first working with people on this stuff. And that, and I said, I wouldn't want to have to start all over again. And I said, you already got momentum. Why would you give the momentum up for a couple drinks because you're on vacation?
Yeah.
Go hug a tree. It just, find a rock that you could become buddies with, and take swimming with you, and things like that.
Yeah.
And she just, she's going like, I said, give it some thought, And so when she came back, she sent me a picture. She went to Costa Rica. When she came back, she had this wonderful body to begin with. But she came back with her arms up in the air, in this picture, she's going like, I'm mighty. And that was her caption underneath it. So I stole it when I put her testimonial up on my website. And, but it's interesting. I've had numerous experiences like that with a lot of people. And then that's when you realize, I'm going like, God, I go, we're thinking that we have a handle. And that, whatever happened to us before is handled. But those things, like the universe keeps on giving us signs and we don't pay attention.
Right.
And so, but if you can pay attention and you can nail it, then you can like, oh, you know what? I don't have to do that anymore. And it's just like, and then you can start, pushing your energy and pushing that negative energy that's around you sometimes away, and block it on ice. It's just visualize it on ice and just get it away from you, or you start saying, thanks for sharing that with me. And because that's really protective, of you, of your energy also. And I think your personal energy is sacred no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
And you can't give it up.
So that's a great story. I have one that I'd like to share after our break, but we do need to take a little bit of a break. So we'll be right back. I'm talking to Dr. Pat Boulogne, and we will be right back.
See you soon.
OMTimes TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities. Transform your life from triggered to empowered with the Perfect Life Awakening program. Royce Morales' extraordinary, enlightening, spiritually based teachings that get to the core of subconscious underlying motivations driving your life. With more than 4 decades as a transformational facilitator and author, Royce Morales offers ways to awaken your deserving, authentic existence, free from paralyzing issues, repetitive patterns, and programmed fears, while simultaneously awakening your spiritually aware higher consciousness, purposeful self. Perfect Life Awakening offers remote group classes and one-on-one sessions to explore even deeper levels. Check out Royce Morales' books, Want, True Love, Past Lives, and Other Complications. No, A Spiritual Wake-Up Call. And Back, Rebirth After Stroke. Learn more about Perfect Life Awakening and Royce Morales. Visit roycemorales.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. This is the Perfect
Yeah.
Life Awakening Show, and I'm talking with Dr. Pat Boulogne. And you were just sharing about a really interesting experience that you had with a patient where resolving some past issues helped to make her healthy and get rid of a really interesting thing going on in her leg. I just wanted to share really fast that I do that as well. And I talk about subconscious things that go on, even from past lives, that can be causing us to be sick or to manifest physical issues or to even get into accidents. And I had a student one time that was about to go into surgery to remove her appendix. She was having these horrible pains. And we did some inner work with her. And she located a past life incident that she had completely blocked, which is what we generally do with past life memories. And she resolved it. You know, she felt it literally lift off. And she went to the doctor the next day that she was about to have surgery. And the doctor said, it's healed. So it's that kind of thing that I think is so interesting and so important. It's kind of like we manifest things to wake us up to those memories. And the other thing I wanted to mention is symbolism. Do you ever get into that? In other words, why is one person having a heart issue and one person having lung issue? And I believe that there's something symbolic about each of those areas in the body that's trying to wake us up, again, to memories or spiritual awakening. It's like, oh, my heart, okay, maybe I need to look at some issues about love in my life, or maybe I need to look at, why do I believe that I don't deserve to breathe and, be energized in that way. So do you ever get into that with your clients?
Well, when not so much, in a way, yes, but when I was in the office, I used to practice a technique called NET, which when I first started studying it was called neuroemotional tracing. I think it's like network technique. I can't remember what they changed it to. But the doctor who did this technique could take people into those spaces where you, when I volunteered one time in front of 150, 300 people or something. And when he was like working with me on specific things, he goes, "Oh, your liver." And I've always been interested. I've been attracted to like liver function and detoxification. That's something that I even still to this day that I help people a lot with that, and to do it in a so it's not, it is a, you're not dumping all those toxins in your system all at one time. But at any rate, in that specific technique, what it looks at is time, place, event, or situation that happens that triggers a certain organ to like be active. So when you're looking at that, you're looking at what age that happened at. And sometimes, I asked him if he ever gets into past lifetime experiences with people, like why is that popping up, right now in that person's space and time continuum. And in my situation that he did, he brought it down to the level of abandonment, and like, why do I always feel, it's just like that. And always in the same, like in the hypochondriac area, like right where the liver kind of would be. Why did I always feel when I didn't feel good? That's where I didn't feel good at. And so, he just said to me, at one point in time, he said, you were abandoned at 2 years of age. And so that feeling that you have, like, because the liver is associated with anger, and gallbladder is associated with resentment. Even in Chinese medicine, they do a lot of emotional stuff. And so he said to me, and I just looked at him, I said, I don't think so. But I'll ask my mother, and to see what she had to say, her input in that, and I could understand to the age of 8, because that's when my father and mother got divorced, but not after that. It's just like, I don't think I didn't do it, I just didn't have a something to tie that into. So when I asked her, she told me that when I was 2 years old that I had pneumonia, and they took me to the hospital. And when they took me to the hospital, they took me and kept me there for 2.5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I said, were you able to see me? And she said, no, they just called us up when you were better, and we came and picked you up. I'm thinking, God bless my mother. But, I'm thinking, no wonder I had abandonment issues, starting at 2 years old,
Yeah.
and then it's just like, and then they kept on being fed. So the thing is, and about where I'm going with this is that, 8 years old, I had that experience that my father lived. So I had the same abandonment issue then also, which made me angry. And so I had a lot of anger issues that I worked out when I was a teenager, and it affected some of my personal, adult relationships until I had that discovery. And then because when you know what the discovery is, and you can get it handled, then you can have that breakthrough that you deserve in order to get on with the rest of your life, because abandonment's never been an issue with me ever since then,
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
but it's like going like, oh, that's that, or
Mhm.
like, it's like, I don't get upset, about certain things that I would, I can remember like certain situation with that. But,
Yeah.
when people have that feeling like, their heart is that they're saddened, or they have too much joy, I always go back to the heart and the lungs. Like, tell me about what's going on. Is this like, when did that start? How does that make you feel besides being sad or having grief? How does that make you feel? Because if you can work through that emotional component of it and find out where it's buried in the body, you can correct that organ system to be more supportive, and then you can have that realization that this is only a memory now. I don't have to be reactive to it,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then you have more healthier breakthroughs and that type of thing.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I
Cool.
definitely agree with all that. And I take it further back because I find that we manifest physical problems to wake us up to something that we caused. In other words, if I'm having problems with my lungs, is there something that I did that set that up karmically so that I
Mhm.
keep repeating that same issue in my body? And of
Well,
course, nobody ever likes to look at that stuff, but that's
well,
where it really comes from.
the other thing that you have to look at is fear and paralyzed fear. If you're going to look at the lungs, because the lungs and the kidneys work together, and kidneys are all
Yeah.
about fear. You
Hmm.
can see paralyzed fear in people like who don't have a butt, and they're walking down the street, that you can look at them and it feels like they're like, their sacrum and their pelvis is just turned in. So there's
Yeah.
more of a flatter appearance, for that. But
Yeah.
it's just like, I always look at where's the co-conspirator, and
Right.
all that, and
Mhm.
it's just like, or is there one? There might not be one, but if there is, then you want to deal with that first
Yeah.
so that you can get the handle on that, or
Yeah.
whichever way you whatever way the body tells me to do it is the way I do it. I don't
Yeah,
listen to
there you go.
I don't pretend I know anything. It's when I get to those
That's good.
situations,
That's
I
very
just let them.
good. Yeah.
I just like, okay, so tell me where we need to go with this, and then I listen
Yes.
to my guides and listen to my like intuitive wisdom.
Good. I was going to ask you that. That's excellent. Yeah. And everything seems to go down to fear. So, yeah, the body is just one big manifestation of all of our unresolved fears. So, there you go. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, I know we're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes. So, I want you to talk about your book. Tell us about your book. It's called, and I don't know why I keep forgetting the title, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Tell us
Well,
about it.
you're in denial. The book is like, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And it is that's a book of questions, that is a guidebook, a workbook, and advocating tool. We only have 15 minutes when you go into a doctor's office, generally speaking, before they shuffle you out the door. You want to make sure
Yes.
your time in there counts. And so if you know where you need to target, because it's a book of questions, it is an in-depth organ system. A woman once said to me, and she goes, "What can you do for, myofibroalgia?" And I said, "You didn't read the book." She said, then she called me back 2 weeks later. She goes, "What about chronic fatigue? You didn't read the book." And then she called me back like, "What about being overweight? You didn't read the book." And when you do that, let me know. And I said, and we'll have a conversation about it. Because what the book is it's that in-depth survey in all your organ systems. It's like a Swiss watch. When one of your organ systems doesn't work, something else doesn't work. It's like, there's a pairing that goes on. There's a little glitch here. There's going to be a little glitch there. And it might just start out something very subtle, which I call Grim Reaper syndrome, and that you don't pay attention to, and then becomes a huge crisis down the road. So I think, the logical makes sense, to solve the solution is to like pay attention now and make sense of what's going on and keep an eye on your health as you're going through your life so you can put, the cap on something that needs to be capped sooner than later, and go like, well, what can I do about that? What can I do about that now? So that's the reason for that aspect of the book, and for people to do that. So it's kind of a DIY, and a lot of times when people do DIYs, they do more harm than good. And so I always like, do that. There's always a way in the venue to reach out to me from the book. There's a link that you can schedule time on my calendar to ask me about what your results actually mean if you can't make heads or tails of them, or you already DIY'd it and you're in the mud. So, you can call me up and be able to do that. But I love the book because it was inspired from walking around Boston, and it was inspired from all my patients and clients and thousands of people who I've treated through all those years that, I gave these science-based tests, and I kept on saying like, what? I go, why didn't you answer that? So it was really one of those, like, wake up in the middle of the night going, you've got to do this. And that's how I did it. Why are you sick, fat, and tired? So find out
Right.
now, and then you can find out exactly what to do,
Yeah.
and move forward. Keep moving forward.
So does it include talking about things like accidents or injuries? How do you address that?
Well, it depends upon what it is. To me, I'm a sports physician, so people used to say to me like, do you treat sprained ankles in your office and like that aren't related to athlete, and an athlete doing it? And I said, for me, I go, a sprained ankle is a sprained ankle. And so, and looking at, when people have pain, they have different chemistry going on in their body. They don't digest very well. They don't sleep very well. People who are in pain a lot of time are absolutely exhausted, and, people who are depressed have gut issues. People who have allergies have gut issues. A friend of mine had autoimmune disease and just like, well, you ruined your gut like years ago, and I said, there's always something that you can do. And so when she answers the questions on the survey that's in the assessment that's in the book, I called her up and said, you were at an airport when you answered those questions. And she said, how do you know that? And I said, because you answered them so fast, you missed the point of, your autoimmune disease, because if you were paying attention, your scores would be different in your gut. And that always relates back to that. For me, I was like, fix your gut, change your life. But you first have to find out what part of your life you're trying to fix and how that relates back because the gut-brain connection is so huge. It's
Yeah.
and how it handles toxins, and it's only this one layer of cells that when they get damaged, they let food seep through, and then you've got a whole host of things that happen for chronic illness and disease. By the year 2030, you know, 2030, 50% of the population in this country is said to be going to have some chronic illness or disease. I don't want to be part of that statistic. I'm going to read the book. I do my own book on a regular basis, but every 4 to 5 months, I'll repeat the questionnaires just like I have clients and patients do. Lead by example.
Yes.
But it's a great
Definitely.
book.
Sounds really wonderful. And I actually read quite a bit of it, and I was thinking, I need to really focus on this and answer those questions. It's not something you can just zip through. Yeah.
No. Well, it's like there's over 300 questions in total.
Oh,
So
wow.
the point of that, and there's a section just for men and there's a section just for women, and there's a lot more questions in the women's section than there is for men. We're much more textured and we can multitask. So, taking your time and doing it over a period of time, if you sat down, seriously looking at it, you probably could do just the questions, but you really want to read the book to know why you're doing the questions. And
Yeah.
when you understand why, then you can choose your next best step. You don't need me to do that, but you at least know. And if you can take the questions of the book, the answers to that to somebody who can understand that level of functional medicine, lifestyle medicine questioning, then your ballpark's ahead of everybody else.
What exactly does functional medicine mean? How could you define that?
Well, traditional medicine is all about what's the matter with you. Like in a nutshell, it's like, oh, what do you have this? And it's a one size fits all approach. Functional medicine is much more personalized, is individualized, is customized, and to what's going on with you. No two people have the same DNA, even if you're in the same house. You have similar things to it, and people are not their DNA because they are the result of how their epigenetics respond to the environment. So if I take myself out of the things, like for instance, if I keep on eating the things that my parents, had, I would have got the same thing as my parents, but I did that. And so it's just like some of the food that they ate, I couldn't figure out what it even was. So, and I need to think like, I need to understand what I'm eating. And so I tell patients and clients that choose that, you have to take a look at, if you want to change your trajectory of your genetics, then you need to change your environment. And that's like one of the things that when they talked about the definition of health, and they talked to the environment. And this day and time, we have so many toxins in our environment. You have to be, actually resilient and incredibly mindful, and read labels and check things out. It doesn't matter that you can't pronounce a word. What matters is the side effects of the word. Look it up on Google. And then you go like, wow, why do they put sodium dioxide in lemon? And every time I read that, I think it's kind of crazy, like that why do they do that? There's so many fillers that are carcinogenic that are in your vitamins, that they use as fillers. I'm going, why do you have to put a filler? Can't you put something else? How come this holistic company can do that and you can't? And so, having exposure, like I said before, like one time is not probably a big deal unless
Yeah.
it's like massive radiation from an atomic bomb,
Right.
then, that could be like, that's totally life altering on every cell in your body,
Yeah.
but having
Yeah.
exposure to, from, fumes, people, get into, what did they call back in the 50s, 1950s and 60s, gasoline babies. Everybody wanted a kid. If they couldn't go to sleep, they threw them in the car. They called them gasoline babies, which was the colloquial name at the time,
Wow.
and like they, like rocking them in a rocking chair, that didn't exist. You threw them in the car and took them for a drive and let them crash, and sleep that way. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
we got to be mindful about what we put in our bodies. Our body are sanctuaries. And we need to
Yeah.
treat them like sanctuaries, and have, people who are toxic. Think about making distance between those people, because those people are taking away your good energy and also your good health, and the more energy that you give up to them, the more that it's a struggle. It's just like sometimes you're just tired. You always know that person too. It's like when they come over, you want to go take a shower after they leave, or you're like the person who like hangs up on you almost literally when you're talking to them, going, "Oh, my husband just came home."
Yeah.
Got a call coming through, got to take it, and those kind of things. So, it's just like my big goal, my mission, is to really help masses of people have that realization that good health can be theirs.
Yeah.
It's just for the asking.
So we have about 1 more minute here. I'm getting notices from my engineer. Tell us how to reach you and where to buy your book. You've got 45 seconds.
Okay. One thing you can do is you can text 26786. That's 26786, and you can text lifestyle, which will take you directly to my website. You'll be able to find out more about me. If you want to find out how you're handling toxins in your environment and whether you're a candidate to do a detox, then text MDQ as a metabolic detoxification questionnaire. Those are 2 ways. We met on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's it's my home. And I like LinkedIn. So that's a good place, and to find me. And I'm sure those will be in the show notes. And also Facebook. I have a page, a personal page, and I'm on Instagram. Twitter I don't use, but I'm on there. But the best place to reach out to me is on my website, which is healthteamnetwork.com.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat Boulogne. This was an awesome experience, and keep up the good work. And I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. I'm going to interview David Gorelli, who's going to talk about escaping from hell. So that should be very interesting. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And your listeners.
Yeah.